From the very first snap, you could feel that this matchup carried a weight far beyond a typical regular season clash, because everything about it screamed postseason implications. The Eagles walked off the field with their 8th win of the year, climbing to the top of the conference and practically sealing control of the division, something that has not happened in repeat fashion since the early 2000s. But even with that rise in the standings, it was impossible to hide the collective discomfort because once again the offense came out tight, hesitant, and nowhere near the level this roster should be producing. What makes it even stranger is how this offense teased everyone before the break. Those performances against Minnesota and New York were electric. The quarterback looked sharp, reading the field with confidence, launching passes with precision, and improvising when necessary, as if he had rediscovered the natural rhythm of his peak form. It genuinely felt like the gears had finally clicked into place. But when the team returned from that week of rest, what showed up on the field was an attack completely tangled, without explosion and struggling in an absurd way to turn clean opportunities into points. The road win in Green Bay did spark some early excitement, especially considering that the opponent had not lost consecutive home games in more than a decade. But scoring just 10 points already sent warning signals. The following week against Detroit made everything even clearer. The defense delivered a massive performance, the kind that shuts down an explosive offense and completely changes the atmosphere of the game. Yet the offense stayed stuck, producing 16 points in 4 quarters, even against a secondary that was depleted and vulnerable. The feeling afterward was that strange mix of victory with a bitter edge. This is not one of those exaggerated reactions people always attribute to Philadelphia fans, as if everyone simply expects perfection. The reality is that this roster has far more offensive potential than it has shown. And even taking into account the brutal cold in Green Bay and the ridiculous wins more recently, other offenses faced similar conditions and still maintained their game plans. The problem was not the weather. The problem was the number of wasted plays, delayed reads, and clear opportunities that vanished into thin air. And when more is demanded from the quarterback, it is not a lack of recognition. Quite the opposite. Anyone who has followed him since he arrived knows he has carried this team through decisive moments, engineered improbable wins, and displayed elite-level play against far stronger defenses than the ones faced these past 2 weeks. But he rides a roller coaster. He can have a night where he is completely dominant, distributing passes like the entire game is moving at his pace, and then immediately follow it with a tight performance, holding the ball too long and missing throws he normally makes without thinking. That inconsistency drags the entire offense out of rhythm. Another point that cannot be ignored is the absurd number of offensive coordinators he has worked with throughout his career. Every season brings a new system, new calls, new adjustments, a new philosophy. That disrupts any quarterback, especially one who relies on timing, flow, and synergy with the play caller. Even with that lack of continuity, he still managed to grow, lead, and turn the team into a real contender. But this season, even understanding the context, it is impossible to deny that he needs to deliver more, and the people designing the plays also need to raise their standard. And that is exactly why certain moments stood out so much. There were plays drawn up perfectly, isolating the running back on a slower defender, creating space, and generating exactly the kind of matchup any coordinator dreams of. Those passes cannot be missed. They move the chains, calm the game, balance the attack, and take pressure off the defense. Several chances like that were wasted. And even though some receivers let a few balls slip, the real issue remains the disconnect between the plan and the execution. To make matters worse, tension built up in the receiver's room. When a talented player begins expressing frustration about targets and involvement, it inevitably affects the environment. And when that spills into the field, everything becomes messy. Trying to force the ball just to satisfy someone rarely works, and it felt like the offense was trying to prove a point instead of simply running its game. And when the same player who complained fails to secure 2 important passes, the situation becomes even more uncomfortable. Meanwhile, the other wide receiver has been the most consistent of the season. He runs clean routes, shows up in crucial moments, and clearly has better timing with the quarterback at this stage of the year. Whenever the offense funnels through him, the drives flow smoother. But instead of sticking to that path, the team tried forcing a redistribution of targets, breaking the rhythm and creating a night where nobody truly found their groove. That cost points, it cost confidence, and it cost control of the game. Even with all these flaws, there is still enormous room for improvement. The season is far from over, and there is time to fix things. Last year also had a frustrating stretch where the offense seemed disconnected before it surged again. But this time the context is different because the defense is playing at an unreal level. That unit is carrying games, flipping possessions, imposing its will, and constantly giving the team chances to win even when the offense barely contributes. That is why the frustration hits so hard. The offense is wasting a golden moment. If this group finally clicks, the team becomes a powerhouse that few defenses can contain, especially with the real possibility of hosting playoff games. With a defense playing like this, the offense does not need to be perfect. It just needs to be efficient, disciplined, and a bit more creative to turn the entire roster into a nearly unstoppable force. But that only happens if the offense wakes up and claims the role everyone knows it is capable of playing. The strange thing about this moment in the season is that the problems are not rooted in anything catastrophic. There is no devastating injury redefining the structure of the offense, no dramatic collapse in talent, no sudden shift in philosophy that would explain such a noticeable drop-off. Instead, what has settled over this unit is something more subtle and, in its own way, more troubling. A collective hesitation, a kind of offensive fog in which timing dissolves, trust wavers, and the simplest details begin to feel heavier than they should. Drives stall not because the defense unveils something groundbreaking, but because 11 players are moving without the certainty that once defined them. That lack of clarity becomes contagious. One slightly mistimed route or one protection breakdown ripples through the entire series, and by the time the ball is snapped again, everyone already feels the pressure that should not exist in those situations. And that sense of tightness becomes even more glaring when you compare it to the freedom this offense has shown at its best. When they are flowing, everything looks effortless. The quarterback's drop is in sync with the receiver's breaks. The running game layers onto the passing game rather than competing with it, and the entire playbook seems to expand with each successful snap. But lately, that rhythm has been replaced by a version of the offense that reacts instead of dictates. They hesitate, then adjust, then try to recover mid-play, and by the time the ball arrives, the window is either gone or too narrow to take advantage of. Football at this level punishes hesitation more than it punishes aggression, and the Eagles have spent too much time caught in between. Part of that indecision stems from the coaching booth. Play calling has swung between too conservative and too stubbornly creative without ever settling into a coherent identity. On one drive, the offense leans heavily on safe, short concepts that keep everything in front of the defense but fail to stretch the field. On the next, they attempt ambitious vertical shots that require chemistry and timing that clearly are not there right now. It's not that the playbook is flawed. It's that the calls aren't matching the rhythm of the moment, and the quarterback, tasked with making split-second judgments, is left trying to bridge the gap between what is drawn and what the situation actually demands. That mismatch shows up most clearly on early downs. Instead of using those opportunities to create manageable situations, the offense has drifted into a pattern of wasted snaps. Inside runs into stacked fronts, quick screens without proper blocking, deep shots that develop too slowly. Those choices not only stall drives, they drain any sense of confidence before a series even begins. 2nd and 10 becomes 3rd and 8, and suddenly the entire crowd, both in the stadium and at home, can predict the outcome before the snap. The predictability becomes suffocating, and you can see it in the body language of the players as they jog back to the huddle. But the solution isn't as simple as telling the quarterback to play better or demanding that the coordinator call better plays. This offense is built on trust and timing, and right now, both feel fractured. You can see it in the routes that come a step too late, in the passes fired a beat too early, in the protections that crumble because one lineman expected help that never arrived. Those tiny errors stack up until the offense looks nothing like the unit that dominated earlier in the year. Football fans often talk about chemistry like it's an intangible mystery, but the truth is that chemistry is just consistent execution repeated over and over until players begin predicting each other's decisions instinctively. Lose that repetition and everything becomes guesswork. The receivers, too, have felt the weight of this inconsistency. Their frustration is understandable, even if the reaction has been messy. When talented players go long stretches without touches, it changes the temperature of a locker room. It shifts the tone on the sideline. And when those emotions spill into the public eye, it creates a pressure that affects decision-making far more than coaches ever admit. Suddenly, the offense isn't just trying to move the ball. It's trying to satisfy expectations to prove that certain players are still central to the plan. That mindset rarely leads to productive football. Targets begin to feel forced, spacing collapses, and receivers start pressing, diving for yards after the catch that aren't there, lunging for contested throws instead of trusting the technique that made them elite. In contrast, the receiver who has been the steady force in this group mirrors everything the offense should be striving for. His consistency is not built on highlight reel moments, but on reliability. Crisp routes, sharp adjustments, quiet dominance in the middle of chaos. He is the type of player who makes the quarterback's job easier simply by being exactly where he should be, and that kind of connection becomes invaluable during turbulent stretches like this. Yet even with his steady presence, the offense keeps drifting away from what works, too often chasing an imaginary version of itself instead of embracing the pieces that are functioning right now. And while the receivers deal with their own challenges, the running game has fallen into an identity crisis as well. Early in the season, the ground attack served as the offense's anchor, controlling tempo and forcing defenses to respect every inch of the field. But lately, inconsistencies on the offensive line and a puzzling shift in usage have thrown the run game out of balance. Some drives feature a commitment to physicality, only for the next series to abandon it entirely. The running back rotation feels disjointed, lacking any discernible pattern that would allow runners to find their rhythm. Nothing kills an offense faster than unpredictability that stems from confusion rather than creativity. Yet even with all of these issues, the most intriguing part of the season is that nothing is broken beyond repair. The talent is intact. The structure of the scheme is intact. The quarterback is capable of far more than he has shown over the past few weeks. The receivers, despite the noise, still form one of the most dynamic groups in the league. The offensive line, when in sync, is capable of overwhelming almost any front. What the team lacks right now is alignment, an internal recalibration that reminds every player of the identity they built and the standard they established. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest updates on our Philadelphia Eagles. And don't be shy. Share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. A low, persistent buzz has begun circulating across the NFL landscape after Lions head coach Dan Campbell reportedly let slip a series of sharp comments about the Philadelphia Eagles in the aftermath of their recent matchup. Though no recording has surfaced, several individuals close to the situation claim the coach's tone behind closed doors was far harsher than anything presented at the podium, sparking a wave of speculation and stirring tension between two of the league's most fiery fan bases. According to whispers coming from inside the Lions facility, Campbell was visibly frustrated when discussing the Eagles' approach, allegedly describing it as reckless and far from the toughness they pretend to have. One source insists he went further, questioning the attitude of certain Eagles players and hinting that their sideline demeanor rubbed him the wrong way. While these claims remain unconfirmed, they've already rippled through social media, igniting debate among supporters and adding extra heat to a rivalry that rarely lacks intensity. Eagles fans, always quick to defend their team's identity, have not taken kindly to the reports. Online forums and comment threads have exploded with reactions ranging from amused disbelief to outright fury. Some fans have accused Campbell of using post-game frustration as an excuse to deflect from his own team's shortcomings. Others believe the supposed remarks were blown out of proportion by insiders eager to stir controversy. Inside Detroit, however, the whispers suggest Campbell's comments reflect broader irritation with what he viewed as unnecessary posturing by the Eagles during the game. Members of the Lions' locker room reportedly felt similarly, though none have spoken publicly, leaving only fragments of hearsay to construct the growing narrative. Whether the remarks were truly as pointed as rumored or merely the product of emotional exaggeration, the story has already taken on a life of its own. For now, both teams remain silent, letting the speculation swirl while fans on both sides brace for the possibility that this tension could spill into their next meeting. In a league built on intensity, the rumor alone may be enough to keep this rivalry simmering long after the final whistle. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Philadelphia Eagles, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.